Alright, time for another draft physics video production and such. Understand the name of the channel, Draft Physics. Meaning, some of it's just off the top of my head actually. But anyway, it's not called Final Physics or something like that. But anyway. So, commenters. Alice set a token full of potential matter. Nice quoting that. I can't even imagine where in the video I would have said potential matter. What kind of matter? And then this little shit sign. It's just, whoa. Yeah, you overwhelm me with that logic. And then pieces of gravity. So these are on Electric Universe videos, right? Where they don't have any explanation for either gravity or magnetism. Magic does it. And all they want to propose as a theory is that, 1,000 years ago, or 2,000, when people were making up all kinds of wacky stories about giants and shit, and dragons and whatnot, those are all true because there was dragons on Venus, and Venus came really close, and the dragons, came to Earth. Some kind, this is what they believe. And this idiot's going to call somebody else an idiot? Yeah. Hilarious. So whatever. I think there's just no reason to engage in conversation with this fellow. I don't believe so. Anybody who has to use little shit icons, they're not articulate enough to say the word or to say something that envisions something similar to. They have to actually use an icon, a little emoticon. Alright, so this idiot, take it in the balls. I gave him a chance, right? I didn't block him before, and but no point in D-balls. Because I still can't get, who would call themselves this? Why would somebody want this to be what they represent themselves with? Take it in D-balls. You're just saying, I can't imagine that human being. I can't. I can't imagine even Homer Simpson being that stupid. He might call himself, Homer the Great, or something. But take it in the balls? What kind of idiot calls himself that? Anyway. Hey, dude. Alright, I've already pointed out. Anybody who calls me their dude, references me as their dude, forget it. We're not going to have a conversation. You can't do better than that. I just leave me anonymous, please. But I'm not a dude, dumbass. Anyway, you're trying to make a gourmet meal using the worst ingredients. Right, the evidence? Experiments. I actually look at the experiment, like the two-slit experiment, and then I try to figure out, well, what's happening? What other ingredients am I using, asshole? What a douche. Which is what you get when you tap into contemporary physics. And how exactly did I do that? I don't believe in relativity. I don't believe in spent time or space. I don't believe space is geometry, whatever the fuck that is, and that you can bend it. Yeah, I don't believe in virtual photons, whatever those are. So what are you talking about? I don't believe things are waving, okay, in any other way than anything elemental is waving in the universe. There's no possibility for elements to wave. They have to do something else. Waves are emergent, retard. Alright, discard, it's just amazing. Discard all of it, not just parts. So what part of it did I keep besides the evidence? Oh yeah, that's the only part I kept. All of contemporary physics is pure BS because it's become addicted to math and concepts. Well, concepts like what? Movement? Yeah, stuff moves in the universe. That's like one of the most obvious functions is a concept, movement. That's right, it happens. Things move. And the things can be described as entities that have a standard profile, like an electron or a proton or a neutron or even the constituents of an atom. And force, can have properties too, like all the photons are presumed to be the same because they all do the same fucking thing over time. They're the same penny and they just have a head or a tail, that kind of thing. So the math concept is legitimate in the sense that those variables are definable and well established. So you're again an idiot. Like, for example, the math that might tell you what gravity is. It's not unreliable. This is why you find yourself wasting your mind on contradictory concepts and circles. And circles? Circles are contrary to what? I mean, this is just gibberish. Trying to make sense out of it. No, I'm trying to make sense out of the evidence, the experiments, shithead. I'm trying to make sense out of why is that happening. There. That's the question. Now, your idiotic answer is some sort of a hyperboloid did it. The toroided it. Some kind of crap. The magic of the ether blew it there. Trying to make sense out of it. It's like all this crap as if you have some sort of opinion I should give a fuck about. It's just amazing. You call yourself jackass, essentially. Stupid, dumb douche. And then you sit there and waste time writing all this crap as if somebody could give a fuck. Oh, yeah. Amazing. It's like trying to make a great pizza. A really complicated pizza. Using fruit skins and banana peels. Well, some people will probably eat it because people put anything on pizza. Reset and start from scratch. Again, fuck you. My suggestion, fuck you. Take another look at Bill Gates' stuff. What stuff? Jump ropes. Actual jumping rope. So a magnet is actually jumping rope. And somehow jumping rope makes attraction and repulsion. Did you know? Man, it's kind of an amazing theory to be that all I have to do is if I jump this way and the other guy is jumping his rope backwards, he's jumping backwards, that somehow from 100 feet away or 10, we'll be subtly attracted to each other, and then we get really close. Somehow our ropes intertwining, banging into each other, will somehow make us zoom right into each other. Oh yeah, it's a great theory. Sorry, it's a piece of shit. It deserves a shit icon. Oh, it's like trying to make a great pizza using... Okay, but anyway. And become a little more humble and reconsider what he's saying. What is he saying? It doesn't make any sense. The strongest force we know of, just about, the one we can handle, two fucking magnets sticking to each other, and he has some dopey notion that there's a bunch of threads tying every atom to every atom, and the ones that happen to be in a magnet happen to be just looping, and somehow they're looping and spinning and rotating by the magic rotator. Fuck you. Anyway, start from scratch. There's no scratch. Well, how is it starting from scratch to imagine the universe as every single electron? It has to be every electron, right? Is attached to every other single electron in the universe. Oh, so there's more mass in string than there is mass in electron. I mean, it's just a preposterously stupid place to start. He's the best and only doing real physics out there. What real physics is he doing? His premise is that evidence isn't what scientists should be doing. It's collecting evidence. Yeah, that's what they should be doing, which is pretty stupid. He doesn't have any respect for experiments. Well, experiments are everything. And what else does he say? I mean, it's just stupid. This playing with the word concept, again, as if obviously motion isn't a thing. It's not a substance. So it has to be considered a concept, an activity at any rate. And it's a perfectly legitimate pursuit of physics to understand the activity of the universe. Oh, fuck, you're just so stupid. Break away from whatever this is. Whatever, once and for all. Re-edification? Stop treating concepts as objects. So more just bullshit. Where do I have anywhere in my theory a concept that's an object? Where, asshole? Where is that? Oh, that's right. You're the one who hasn't paid any attention. Don't waste your mind. Instead, simplify it. Good luck. Oh yeah, it simplifies things by trying to imagine how fucking magnets have perpetual jump roping energy. No. God, you're just so fucking stupid. And they talk like they know something. It's just so fucking scary how people who are so fucking gone, outside the realm of reasonable conversation, and they think they're making sense. All right, so Robert Ritchie is somewhat on the cusp of such a syndrome. I really hate to agree with you, Gary. Well, it's like I said, you agreeing with me might scare me anyway. However, you are correct, Gary. Do not listen to the naysayers. Well, is there any indication I'm going to listen to naysayers? No, there's no indication. The photon traveling from left to right. So you probably just should have said the photon moving in other directions that don't make any fucking sense because of some field notion. Obviously perturbing, you could say the photon perturbing some field, because that's what they're arguing, is that there's some magnetic and electric field that's perturbing, or perturbed the photon into existence, or the photon is perturbing, or something is perturbing, where there's just absolutely not a single bit of experimental evidence indicating photons radiate anything at all. They are, in fact, radiation. They can't really radiate something when they are, in fact, radiation. It is absorbed by the electron, and the electron jumps to a higher orbit, increased negative potential, which I would also argue they could have simply backwards and they'd have no way of knowing. I mean, frankly, the higher energy is the inner orbit. The lower energy is the outer orbit. Anyway, when the electron drops into the original orbit and is emitted with the same energy, zero loss, or whatever, there's obviously two separate conditions, and one condition emits a photon and one condition absorbs a photon. But whatever. There is, as you say, a photon interaction time. I just checking what I just said. As I've pointed out, the absorption always comes with it. You're absorbing a direction, and that's all. You're always going to emit back the energy. So there's always conservation. What there isn't is conservation of direction. There is, as you say, a photon interaction time. The problem with the wavelength frequency of the photon is the same as when it entered. Whatever. The problem I have with redshift is that some scientists believe that there are galaxies moving away from us faster than light speed. I don't think they believe that. They're just saying that's what it calculates out to, which doesn't make much fucking sense, which ought to give them an indication that, oh, we're probably not understanding this redshift issue. And that is part I do not believe. Yes, well, I don't even believe they're moving half the speed of light because, as I've already pointed out, velocity has to be acquired. That means you have to have interactions to acquire the velocity that created the velocity. And how exactly, like when they have black holes, moving into each other at these preposterous speeds coming from, different locations in space, and it can caught in a swirly-dirly. It just can't happen that way. Okay, it just can't. I mean, they have to start in a binary condition, and then you have to somehow keep adding energy to a system. But anyway, there's no point in getting into it, but it's just doesn't make any frickin' sense. All right. So then the stray cat's asshole, who is an asshole. The photon traveling from left to right is absorbed by the electron, and the electron jumps to a higher orbit. Well, no one disagrees with this. Well, I would say I don't. There's nothing to agree or disagree with in terms of, yes, they've attempted to model functions that take place. I'm just saying there could be other reasons, other mechanisms that create the same effect besides creating orbiting atomic systems, because then you have to explain, well, how did the electrons end up with a standard speed? Because they have to stay in these standard orbits and all of that crap. So I don't buy this whole electrons spinning around something and being held by some kind of gravity nonsense. I think that's just crap. So everyone doesn't agree with I'll agree with distance from protons. I've made the argument that that's key to creating a difference in your magnetic field, is how far the dipoles are from each other is critical. But the monopoles. But anyway, the problem with wavelength frequency is the photon is the same as when it entered. You are correct. Well, that's, I think the whole argument is that same doesn't mean same, in the sense that if I have two ping pong paddles and I have a ping pong ball bouncing between them, and I make the system as lossless as possible in the sense that the ball doesn't lose any energy, then I can move the two plates closer together, and the ping pong ball moving at the same speed, if you count the interactions, is creating more pressure. And pressure is associated with energy. It's just a fact. If he was arguing otherwise, and this is what he did not understand. He was arguing otherwise, and this is what he did not understand. Yeah, sorry. Fuck you. Alright, and screw this I agree with you crap. Totally uninterested. I mean, unless you're a degreed physicist or something, why is your agreement with me about anything should mean anything to me? If your logic is completely irrational in terms of what you're basing it on. Your concept of photons as waving is nonsense, in my opinion. It's just absolute nonsense. This video is probably one of the best works yet. Vivid, on-point explanations. Thank you. Well, I'm glad you interpreted it such. I agree, he did well here. Well, you really... This is the time dilation. The space is bent and time is warped. Bullshit. Space is something that you can bend, and time is a something you can bend. It's pretty hard to say. I mean, that should be sayable without even almost saying anything. Just say it on its face. The invisible man's space and the invisible man's time. I mean, they're just fake things. There's just no evidence that either one of them has any substance. You know, one just being a function and one being nothing. He had a few really good ones lately. It's been great. Well, I'm glad there's a couple of people who think so. Alright, so this will be the last one I'll read of this ass wipe. Anyway, DraftScience. Don't go believing that say you're insane. Those that say you're insane. Well, I've already made counter arguments that it's sort of a weak argument. It's sort of the Ken Wheeler approach to argumentation. Oh, Einstein's a knuckle-dragging, blah, 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 blah. You know, fuzzy hair, blah, blah. Yeah, this is useless crap. You're not. and you're capable of diagnosing other people. Sorry. Take it into balls. That's what he calls himself, and yet he wants to have some sort of credibility, like, I can tell you whether you're smart or stupid. I can tell you whether you're right or wrong. No, you can't. You're just confused. Yes, you're quite confused about your state of mind and your place in the universe, because you've been given the wrong ingredients, so he's using the same bullshit. Like, what wrong ingredient? Oh, evidence that you have to match. Look, I'll just make the argument again. I mean, magnetism will be the next subject of why can't this be, because it's just slam dunk, game over. Nobody has a rational explanation of magnets except me. Anyway, to make your stuff, you keep using the same junk from standard physics. So again, what junk? There are electrons, there are protons, there's neutrons, and there's force. But the evidence indicates all of those things exist, asshole. And are trying to make it all fit. Yes, and I've done that, jackass. Wow, what a fucking idiot. You need to discard the whole thing. You already said all of this same crap all over again. Not just some of it. Your theory here sucks. Says you, which with no argument to back it up. But it's not your fault. Well, frankly, if we're going to bother with this your thing, my thing, I thing, not thing, it is in fact, we are machines. That the machine can't produce this soda, without holes in the can or something. It's the fucking machine's fault. I recommend that you study Bill Gates' model and go from there. What's to study? There's nothing to study. Fucking jump ropes? The guy can't even figure out that when you put a rope around a donkey's neck, that you're pushing the donkey. When you pull on the rope, you're pushing on the back of the donkey's neck. You're pushing the donkey to you. You're not pulling anything. He's the best there is. Oh, fuck. And his model is the best one. Explain how. Just explain. I mean, he seems to keep running from arguments like, well, how do your ropes not get twisted as hell? How is the whole fucking universe not become some kind of silly knot? In his model, you don't have to invent ghosts. The whole thing is made... Yes, you don't need ghosts because he's made 4 million sheets. There's sheets everywhere with 2 holes in them. I mean, the whole thing is made out of a fake universe, made out of a fake substance called rope. I mean, what the fuck? Magic rope. I mean, it's not just rope. I mean, it's magic rope. As you do when you invoke forces and pressure. Yes, forces made out of bullets. Bullets impose pressure. Yeah, that's how it works, shit for brain. You also don't have to invent concepts. Well, I don't have to invent concepts. Yeah, concepts like jumping rope that don't even work rationally. There's absolutely no reason, except if you have an ether, right? Here's Bill Gates saying there's no ether, and yet somehow he thinks jumping rope, the only way that creates any attraction at all is if you're in a medium and you start agitating the medium. And it's a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of repulsion or attraction that you can manifest by creating all this swirly shit. I mean, it's a propeller, like with one propeller. I don't even know how to describe how inefficient it is as a creator of low and high pressure. Another funny part, right, is the whole thing creates a change in pressure. And he just pooed on the word pressure. So why don't you just explain to me, how do 2 jumping ropes hitting each other make attraction? Why don't you explain how that works? I can't figure it out. You don't have to invent concepts like positive and negative. Well, they're frankly not invented. They're clearly 2 completely opposite things. 2 things that behave completely in the inverse way. And it seems perfectly rational to call them black and white, or 0 and 1, or positive and negative, or any of that crap. Good luck. Fuck you. I don't wish you any luck. I hope you find your brain. But I don't think it's going to happen. Oh, god damn these people. So another boss roadie. Anyway. Wow. Over the last few videos, you just demonstrated your below 5th grade grasp of math. Well, there wasn't that much math, and logic. Well, yes, I did make a logical error. But I explained the context of that error is I forgot that photons are conveyed as a frequency. So that means the 2 bits have to be interpreted as a thing. Okay. and that makes the analysis a little different. But anyway, it is clearly a mistake, and not to appreciate that there has to be a redshift going in before the blue shift out. I mean, the blue shift in, redshift out, because we're not talking about something manufactured in the thing itself. But regardless, I'm going to argue there will be an explanation that solves that problem. But anyway, so what's your point? I mean, first, the subject isn't closed. Second, yeah, I made a video. See, and he didn't put this comment on the video where I can see I didn't appreciate the subtlety of the argument. And so he puts it on a different video. Why doesn't he put it on the one where I'm conceding? Oh, that's right, because he's petty. Yeah, because he can't make a manly, straight-up argument. And what's his argument? Oh, because you got that wrong, you got everything wrong. So I can just say everything Einstein ever said was stupid and wrong, because Einstein said it was nearly impossible we were never really going to, as a practical matter, ever create a neutron chain reaction. And then a year after he said it, we did. So everything he said must be shit. Got utterly humiliated. Well, whatever. I mean, humiliation requires a certain participation by both parties, and I'm really not participating. Again, the channel's called Draft Physics. Duh. And you really haven't made a counter argument against any of the fundamental premises. In this video alone, you're not going to make any argument because you're a pussy. And you're too much of a coward to be interrogated on what you believe and what kind of math you are capable of doing. And your conclusions is what your subconscious is doing great physics. And your conclusion is that your subconscious... I said it was a great analogy. Now, you don't think that stuff like the arrangement of poetry and the arrangement of words and vocabulary and syllables and rhymes does have a correlation to a kind of constructive and destructive interference, and the argument that it's sort of like resonant frequencies, where the more compatible, the more power, that kind of thing. I think it's a great analogy. This is why we love watching your videos. But you're obviously not capable of participating in some sort of reasonable, relevant manner. This level of megalomania, again, in what respect? Compared to who? Oh, the other people who think they're right? Yeah. No, I don't think so. I don't think compared to any of the other people who think they're right, I'm any more wrong. And what is your megalomania? You think you're the arbiter of truth. And you can say who's an idiot, who's not. Fuck you. Combined with sheer imbecility and unmatched on YouTube. Well, I'm sure you want to take that to a test? You want to have like a bet? That I won't win that award. And none of these people none of them have the courage to come into the room and put their name and their reputation on their words. They're just so fucking coward. Your silly explanation of magnetism, so they haven't touched that. They haven't touched it with a comment. There's no comments on the magnetism videos. I've pointed to them, said, go debunk this. Explain how this doesn't work or can't be true. And there's no comments on the videos. None. Alright. Your silly explanation of magnetism was demolished when you couldn't explain the 10 to the 40 disparity in strength. Well, again, I think I did explain how there's just no point in making these idiotic comparisons. One force is between electrons and it's charged, right? The electron is charged. Alright, it's a different manifestation of the force. So why would you compare the two? Electrons are always interacting with a charged field from their perspective. And all I've pointed out is gravity neutralizes charge because there's all randomness. They're not magnets. The Earth isn't a magnet, the Sun isn't a magnet in any significant way. So the charge force becomes irrelevant. It's diluted away, so it doesn't even exist. And the only thing electrons and protons are doing is charge. So I've explained the difference, the disparity. You're just not reasonable enough to say, yeah, I understand they're not the same thing. Charge is a completely different manifestation of the force. Just the same as frequency is a manifestation. We can't see things that don't have frequencies in a tiny range. There's a 10 to the millionth difference in the effect of a photon we can see and a photon we can't see. Oh, that's amazing. How can there be a 10 to the gazillionth a difference in the effect of a photon? How is it possible? One photon creates an electric current in my brain and the other photon doesn't. How is that possible? How could there be such a disparity? How can you explain that disparity? Yeah, it's got a cause, asshole. It's not some unsolvable mystery. No, it's a solvable mystery. There's a qualitative, real difference, and that's why there's a difference. Jeez. They're not the same thing. Gravity's not the same as magnetism. Duh. It's a different manifestation of force. Alright, and strength, and let's see, and served up your usual word salad of gibberish. So it's gibberish to point out how first the size scale is different, but clearly there's no gravity affecting electrons. Electrons don't do gravity. Everything that hits them is one force, the same force that hits planets. And obviously the electron, compared to the size of the force bits, is, the relationship between the size of the force and the electron, and the relationship between the size of the force and the frickin' planet Earth, is your difference right there. Anyway, now your explanation of time dilation is equally inane. You won't provide a single shred of argument, I'm sure. I am not in the mood. You're in the mood to slander and to talk shit, but you can't back it up with anything like evidence. So you're just a shit talker. I'm not in the mood to pamper you with any more and point out the trivial flaws in your logic. Well, if they were trivial and simple, then it would just take a sentence. You can't manage that. No, you can't manage it, but you can't compose it because it can't exist, because your theory is fucking silly. An intelligent teenager would see through the holes in your logic. Oh, like they can't see through the holes in... well, the invisible spaceman did it. Yeah. And then the invisible virtual photon man did it. Yeah. Dark matter. Sorry. Fuck you. There's no arguments here. This is just such a waste of my time. But I already know that about comments, and I should just ignore them, frankly. But we'll indulge a little bit. Look, I do give them a chance, right? And then it's just forget it. It's the same old crap over and over. All right. So I think, is there any point in getting on to any other subject? So anyway, the thing about photons, the interesting thing. So maybe I'll draw a photon, just because it's a subject that isn't. This is the draft part. There's an idea of how it's functioning, right? It's like I give you the idea of polarization being the fact that the electron's moving as it produces a photon, and the electron, so the photons, the quanta, aren't perfectly aligned with each other. And obviously the slower the vibration, the bigger the ability to be out of alignment. And the faster the frequency, the quicker you're releasing the quanta of energy, the less likely for them to be out of phase with each other. Out of alignment. Phase would be the wrong word. There's so many of these subjects that are really interesting, and physics hasn't even touched them because they have no concept of what is. They don't know what polarization is. They have no idea. They have some notion that, well, it has something to do with an alignment of some kind of fields, but we don't even have any evidence these fields even exist. Where the fields of what? Fields where? Show me one. I mean, it's so bad. Alright, should be back. So I'm just throw some kind of crap in the image here to try to fix it a little bit, but in the future I'll maybe put this thing over there or some kind of whatever. Doesn't matter. Alright, so the idea of a photon, as talked about before, is this dilemma of what's... These are just so fucking useless. Jesus Christ. And the idea that it has these... What do you have to do? Come on. They're brand new, and they show you how much ink is in them, so they're like impressing you. Look, you can see how much ink is in it. Well, how come it's not writing? Piece of shit. Anyway, I have to learn. I have to pre whatever the ink in the drawing thing. Anyway, so their vision is you could just take this image and yeah, you could turn it into their image. Sort of, and understand that there's nodes in this thing, and that these are the wavelength, and so you could wave it into something. But my argument is that no, it's just a period between things. Okay, things moving. There's nothing in between the moving bits, and blah 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 blah. But anyway, you can. So they have the same conception that it is quanta. I mean, it's breakdownable into these things called a wavelength, and the thing that is creating the wavelength has the energy. Now, the idea is our human eye can only see a photon, okay, if there's 5 or 6 of these things. Now, they say 5 or 6 photons, but I think the truth is these nodes, there has to be 5 or 6 elements to the ray, okay? Because see, when they say photon, they're not thinking about like the single slit with single photons. They're thinking about well, when you shoot 1,000,000 photons, it creates a wave. Well, yeah, but a single photon doesn't create a wave. All right, so I mean, yeah, when there's 1,000,000 photons, the photons are randomly shot. That'll look like a wave. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what's an individual photon. What's the one little thing that lands somewhere? What is that? All right, and that is made of this. And for our eye to see it, it has to have, let's say, 6 of these things. Okay, it has to be a ray that has a length to it, a substance to it. Now, for the what does the electron need? We could make the argument. So you could go with like a photomultiplier. And the argument might be that a photomultiplier needs at least 3 of these things, right? So just 2 won't do it. You have to have 3. If you don't have 3 at the same frequency, at the same distance, it won't be registered as something that causes the electron to move. So in the argument about redshift, I forgot that this is what a photon is to an electron. Electrons, when they just get hit with a single thing, so here's an electron, a little photon comes, a little element of a ton, okay, just 2 of them. Well, 2 of them won't do it. It won't push the electron enough to cause it to produce electricity, essentially, to cause another atom next to it to pressurize. So the pressure won't go from here to here. It won't move if the pressure is below having 3 nodes. So even if you think of it as one of these silly wavy things, waving in 2 different dimensions, this one going this way, and this one going this way, magnetic field and electric field. So even if you think of it this way, there's the real question about what this frequency does, and if I break that frequency, how this won't happen. there won't be a transfer of a lump from here to here, the lump being the electron, you could argue. Now, I'm not so sure whole electrons are transferred, but let's just say they are. And that's the key to the thing. That's the key to electricity, is actually making an electron move from one place and forcing it to move to another atom. Okay? So it has to jump to the other atom to create current. I'd say it probably just jumps right back again. But as I've argued, it's really just the pressure of the atom. You know, one atom has too much energy in it, the other atom has less energy, and the two of them will balance that pressure, and that'll be electricity. And the medium to do that, though, is still the electron. The electron is the thing that this electron over here will push on this electron over here in this atom, and that push is what balances the pressure. This one goes smaller, this one goes bigger. Anyway, so now you got so you got to tie all of these things together. Electricity and magnetism, all these things are part of the story of anything. So in talking about redshift, leave it start back here. You know, we're talking about something getting encountered coming in, you know, moving this way into a device. So see, this is a kind of an easy device to mechanically build. You could build a machine that could go down the street and it would pick up jelly beans, let's say, and it would drop them behind them. And the point would be is if it's moving in this direction, it would pick up the jelly beans that were an inch apart and it would deposit them an inch and a quarter apart, that kind of thing. So, you know, in theory, if this principle works. Now, the other principle is there's a feeder on the machine that just feeds jelly beans in, and they're an inch apart, and they'll come out as an inch and a quarter. Now, that machine is one you can build. This one will work. Okay, so you have an inch and a quarter, and you have only an inch here. All right. So a frequency in, a different frequency out if this machine is moving this way. The inverse would be if it's moving, if it's dropping them in front of it. So if the motion is in this direction and it's dropping jelly beans in front of it, it'll end up putting the jelly beans closer to each other. So they'll only be 3/4 of an inch apart. Something wrong with that. I'm just saying around the face of it there's something. No, that still doesn't work. There's something. Alright, I probably shouldn't use that analogy because now I'm in trouble. The idea is always to remember these things move as soon as they hit. You know, they're moving. So that's part of the catch to this conversation. But there's something wrong with that picture. I just can't think of what it is at the moment. You're getting closer, you drop one, then you move closer and you drop one. Something's not right. Anyway, well, the point is that the idea is that this frequency is this is what it has to have. It's the frequency is going to move the electron, and when the electron moves inside the atom, that's the key part of it, right? Is this pressure conveyed, and whether there's a shift when that happens, whether the frequency, I mean, the frequency's been essentially converted into an action. So, all right, here's the best way to say it. In the black body scenario, you know, in the photoelectric effect, in the thing that sort of demonstrated that, you know, photons are particles, the idea is that the frequency is directly associated with how far the electron moves. So the momentum of the electron is dependent on the frequency, and there's a certain minimum frequency that you need to even allow the electron to move. So if the frequency is too low, the electron doesn't leave, it just stays here. All right, and then if you make the frequency smaller, the electron moves further. So you get more frequency, more energy in the electron when it moves. And so you can sort of understand that frequency is converted by an atom. Frequency goes in and it's converted into a momentum of an electron and the speed of it. And so now you can convert that back into a frequency. And that's where I'm arguing redshift happens, is in this process of converting the momentum of the electron, which would matter whether the momentum is on a train or not. If the electron is on a train, it's going at different absolute speed. It's like me throwing the baseball off the plane is the better one. So you have a plane that has a convertible. It's a convertible plane. There's a guy staying that's not moving, and I want to throw a baseball to him after I've already passed him. I can have this idea that I can do that, but I can't, because I have to throw the baseball 300 miles an hour to get the baseball to go anywhere near the guy. And I'm obviously not going to be able to do that. So that's the key thing to understand, is what the atoms are doing. This is the part that should have been part of the premise to the conversation, was that frequency is converted into momentum of an electron and then reconverted into a frequency out. So electron momentum, that's what has to be understood as part of how this machine will function, how it will convert what it takes in into an output. Okay, and so that was my mistake, not to understand that this has to be resolved, sort of. You have to have a resolved theory of what these nodes are doing, what they represent. And what they represent is, the higher the frequency essentially equates to back to the ping pong paddles. When the paddles are far apart, this bounce rate is very slow. When the paddles are close together, the bounce rate is very high. And if this thing has a constant speed, and therefore a constant momentum, this obviously, the only thing you've done is change these positions, but you have so much more energy here than you have here, because the impacts are measuring energy, pressure. Okay, so that's probably enough in defense of my draft physics. So they don't have a theory of any of this stuff. They just give you this stupid thing, and they kind of just evade the subject of, is each node a photon? What's a photon? They don't tell you. They just draw you this silly picture and say that's a photon. They can draw it with 10 of these little wavy things, or 5. I mean, if you go to a Wikipedia page, they'll just draw like 5 of them, 5 little wavy things, and say, there, that's a photon. What do you mean? Can it have 10 of those things? Can it have 20? I mean, how many? 3, 7? No explanation. So the thing to understand is the electron does require a minimum. I would argue the minimum has to be more than just one node, because then I think noise, gravity, would create enough random photons to really mess up the universe. Electrons would be firing all the time, and we wouldn't be able to distinguish the other field excitements from the photons. So it probably takes 3, as a minimum for an electron to create the tension you need, as I pointed out in the trampoline analogy. Another very good analogy. See, that's the funny thing, right? They use the trampoline to illustrate bent space, and it's a terrible analogy because it requires energy in to illustrate energy out, where I'm just using it purely as an analogy, a metaphor, and that just to make the understanding that the thing could be a spring, it can be anything with tension, and the electron requires you to hit it before it bounces back. So you have to hit it deep, and then you hit it deeper, and then you hit it deeper before it has time to bounce back. And the bounce back would be the other atom receiving the higher pressure and bouncing its reaction back. So this atom has high pressure, it forces more pressure on this atom, it takes time to get there, and then it has to send the pressure back for this one to know you can't go that way. Okay, so it doesn't know it can't go that way until it tests that way. It has to send energy that way before it can know it can't go that way. And the key is that you hit the electron. I really should just redraw that. Key is to hit the electron. So we have an electron from one atom here, so this is connected to an atom, this is connected to an atom. This electron is being pushed in that direction. The idea is this pushing has to happen before this reaction can happen. So before the movement of this electron, which creates less distance, so the electron moves to say here, then it has to be less distance. It has to not know that this electron is saying you can't come here. It's before it pushes back. So this electron moves because of this photon. It absorbs it, and it absorbs this one and moves closer, and then it absorbs one more, let's say, and moves even closer, and then the distance is short enough here where now the response has finally gotten to the electron that's here now. And this electron now knows I can't go this way. I'm getting hit by more force this way. That will make me start to move back this way. So the force balances between the two, the yin and yang back and forth. But the real key is this distance between the electrons is completely what this distance, the frequency, this is why the frequency matters, is because the action has to happen before this reaction. So this reaction has to be slower than this frequency for electricity to happen. If the reaction happens first, the electron doesn't move. It just goes back. It says, oh, I feel you, I'm not going, sorry I disturbed you, I'm going back. So as soon as it knows this other electron is here, this game of absorbing momentum is over, and it's just going to end up going right back where it was. So to move the electron any distance, you have to hit it with a frequency that's faster. You have to have your energy pushed in faster than the rebound energy between the atoms. So Woot guy, explain how that's crap and garbage and junk and shit and not worth anybody talking about ever again on planet Earth. You fucking useless shitty coward. Really? You're just such an asshole. Yeah. Why don't you have the guts to come into a room and explain how that diagram doesn't explain why frequency matters? And why don't you give me the conventional explanation of why frequency matters? Because you can't, because they don't have one. Fuck. Yeah, fuck you. Alright. So now I've proven my point. I have nothing to be ashamed of or to be humiliated by. Fuck you. And such. Safe. I think we're done.